how do you develop that adult relationship with your parents and set those boundaries? Where you're just like, I'm an adult now, can't be talking to me like you used to, can't be saying, certain things to me because listen, you can't be catching attitude. Because I feel like that's such a fine line to walk when you like now start and have your own life and like leave your parents, like you live a nest. It's like, how do you get to that point where you're like, we're adults now. We're not talking as another child. We're talking as adults. You may be still my mother and I'm still your child, but we may not be age mates, but we're adults.
Right. That's so interesting because there's so many ways to go about this and everyone goes about it so differently. And I will say that my advice may not be the best advice for you. You know your parents. So
I think any advice is welcome.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say personally, I never had it was never a thing where I actually expressed verbally my boundaries. I don't think I do a good job of communicating my boundaries, but I articulate my boundaries through my actions. So I don't think there was ever a conversation, but there have been moments where my parents felt the shift, where it's like, oh, you speak to me in a certain way, I'm not receptive. This is not going to work because now I have autonomy. I don't have to continue this conversation. I don't have to,
be in the space.
Yeah, or negotiate with you what I want from this conversation.
Right.
So I think mine was more of a hard transition versus like a soft guided transition for parents. Like, oh, mom, I'm growing up. I'm this and that. Like it wasn't delicate, I will say. It was very much like, this is where I'm at, and it's like a hard stop.
Oh shit! So it was more like the cold turkey kind of it, like throw you in the deep end, see if you sink or swim.
Yes, and I think for some parents, it's effective, but it's not necessarily the best way to go about it. Like I said, it's effective. It may work, but I also understand that all actions have consequences, and I think, our parents always tell us that. All actions have consequences. And now I'm reciprocating that energy. All actions have consequences.
You're this way too.
Oh, yes. Come on. Because then they're like, oh shit, you were listening all these years.
Right. So I think also another thing I learned about boundaries, it's not about them. It's all about you, right? So I'm not going to continue. If somebody is crossing your boundaries time and time again, and you keep telling them they're crossing your boundaries, and nothing is changing, the onus is on you to shift how you're engaging. It's not on them. You can't control another person. Like, I think most people get frustrated because they want to control, or they want to tell their parents, this is how you should move when it comes to me, and I would get frustrated because it's like, how do you not see that this is not working? Or how do you not see this is not going to be an optimal environment for us to have this dialogue, have this dialogue or have this type of relationship or dynamic. But I think the onus is always going to be on you. So what are you going to shift? Always ask yourself, what are you responsible for shifting? If you say, hey, you don't respect XYZ, I have to show you what that looks like. I have to execute. Boundaries is about execution. It's not about just saying something. It's about what are you doing? What is the action behind your boundaries? So if I say that this is a firm boundary, I'm not going to answer your calls. If I said then I'm going to follow through on that.
That's true. I think that's what I'm struggling with right now is verbally now, because I'm stuck with them. I'm financially reliant on them to an extent. So now it's like,
yeah, that's a good point.
I don't have the autonomy I would have if I wasn't living with them, or like I used to have when I wasn't staying with them. And now when they're working my nerves and they're crossing my boundaries.
You better do a deep
look. And then we have that conversation, but it's like at that point, it's already out of hand. Like, now we're butting heads, and now I'm trying to tell you about my boundaries now that because you've crossed them 1,000,001 times. And now it's like
too far gone.
I want to take some lessons out of your book and just be like, girl, you won't even get the opportunity to cross this boundary again. Like, there are no conversations.
That's the caveat is when you are dependent or reliant on your parents, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Yes.
it's really difficult. When you're living under the same roof, it's really difficult because to me, when I was struggling to kind of, I don't know, delineate my boundaries with them, it was really hard because there was no room to really go. Like, what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's like, so what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about it?
And what about it?
Yeah, like your parents were like, so what are you gonna do? So I think until your parents understand, number one, your absence and the value you have, because parents don't feel your value till you're absent.
Yes.
When you can't pick up their child,
look,
when you're not the one they go to, be like, oh, I need you to run to the grocery store.
Right, you're not ready at a moment's notice.
I need you to take me somewhere. Let's go. I have plans. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think also because and distance from your parents, especially as adults, it really helps the relationship sometimes, because when you're under the same roof, it's really hard to see outside of that dynamic that's been set in place. Yeah. And like, when, let's say, for example, we're speaking about mental health, because parents do a number on our mental health.
Maybe.
Talk about especially
it. That's another podcast
parents,
episode. We'll have back on to talk about
yes. Because she knows this. She's a Miss Psychology major. She went to school for this.
No, but I mean, it's not even a psychology aside, just like from my experience with my own parents, and just like you have experience with your own parents, no one can tell you how to navigate your parents because only you have the 20 plus years experience, and you know who you've perceived them to be through these years. And, one thing is sometimes what you perceive is not necessarily true, but we have to navigate our relationship with our parents in a way, like, I don't know. I've learned to give them grace, but I don't let them get away with things.
Ooh.
But I think
run that back. That's a word right there.
One more time.
Run that back. Say it again.
Look,
I've learned to give them grace, but I've not allowed them to get away with everything.
No, okay, church. I know y'all heard that.
Let the church say amen.
Come on.
Hey.
No, because there are some things I feel like you said, there's
you gotta hold them accountable.
Yeah, but especially when you're independent, like you allow them to cross certain boundaries to where, like you said, there's a point where it gets to a head.
Yes, it does. It does, and I think when it gets to a head, it just amplifies what was already like there, like deep rooted, and it all comes out at once.
Because at this point now, you're arguing about the surface level, whatever this issue is, but it's a lot deeper than that.
Yeah, unless y'all start
taking on that, like taking that on, you're gonna continue having these surface level issues.
Oh, 100%. I think when you're in a position, like if you are with your parents, if you're actively with your, obviously under the same household, under the same roof, you have to tread lightly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have to tread lightly because
you ain't trying to be homeless.
Girl, in this motherfucking economy?
Yeah, and this inflation?
Hey. We also like being African as another layer. It's another layer because expressing yourself means disrespecting them.
Ooh, that's another word. Come on, church, go ahead. Note number 2. Listen, no, this is note number 2.
I hope y'all have your pen and paper today.
This is note number 2. No, come on, say that again for him.
No, expressing yourself doesn't mean disrespecting them.
And
this was for the African parents.
This is the segment I'm sending. We're sending. We will keep this clean, so you can send from this point to the end of this episode to your parents.
Listen.
Yeah, it's real. When I think it's our culture that usually it's.
If you want to hear more, check out the Untitled Africans podcast on whichever app that you like to listen to stuff. Or watch us on YouTube at WangechiTV. You can hear more of this episode and join the Untitled Africans community. Come on, twende, don't miss out.